Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We are approaching branding time for spring-born calves. We're here at the Range Cow Research Center with Dave Lallman, our Extension Beef Cattle Specialist. And Dave, you're starting to get some questions about the use of implants. What are you hearing?
Well, it's time of the year for people to consider that because it would be something that you would try to accomplish during that branding process. And so the question is, you know, should they consider doing that? What's the cost effectiveness of it? And, you know, does that influence the price of the calves later on? Because it will influence their weight.
And some of the things that are influencing this decision is public perception and what the current trends are. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, apparently that's exactly right, because you can look at some really nice data sets, and we have several surveys that suggest that right now about 28% of cow-calf producers are implanting their steer calves at branding time. That's gone way down in the last 20 years or so. In fact, the Superior Livestock Video Auction data shows that in the last 20 years that's gone from nearly 65 to 70% all the way down to about 30%, 28 to 30. So for some reason, and those are larger producers, those are folks with, generally speaking, at least 200 cows. So we think probably that's a lot of that is perception or fear of a negative influence when it comes time to market those cattle.
So then how do the facts in terms of the sales, what do they indicate? What's the heart of all of that?
Well, Superior has done a fantastic job studying that. And of course, in their data set, they have millions of cattle. And so they study the lots that are implanted and compare that to lots that are not implanted of similar quality, gender, breed type of cattle. And what they found, bottom line is, over the years with all those, millions of head of data, is that there's no influence on price. Implanting does not influence price.
You think that it might, and maybe that is some of the perception or reasons why people have dropped off, right?
More than likely, and what little information we have about people's reasoning for declining to implement that technology, that's exactly what it suggests, is that it's primarily either they have a core value against using that technology to sort of replace the hormones that were taken away when the calf was castrated in the first place, or it's a market influence fear or misconception.
What does the research tell you about the sale price for calves that have been implanted?
Well, it says that there is just no difference compared to calves that have not been. So it's really interesting. About 5 to 7% of the beef that's marketed in this country are actually in a certified non-hormone treated or all natural program. Okay, about 5 to 7%. But about 70% of our cow-calf producers are choosing not to implant. That's a lot more than we need. And the truth of the matter is that the data shows that there's no downstream negative impacts of the calfhood implant. So a stocker person or feed yard person buys your calves that have been implanted at branding time. There's no negative influence on weight gain, no negative influence on feed efficiency, apparently no negative influence on carcass quality. So I think the important takeaway is that the perceptions about a potential negative impact because someone used implant technology does not appear to be the case. There is no influence on market price according to that large data sets and several other surveys relative to the impact on price.
Okay, Dave Lallman, thanks a lot. And for a link to more information on the research that Dave just talked about, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Oklahoma City's Festival of the Arts and Storms seem to be annual dancing partners. Storms last weekend and Tuesday night left us a 7-day rainfall map from April 26th to May 3rd, with high rainfall amounts over much of the state. While the blue areas had less than an inch of rain, most of the green areas had more than 2 inches. Yellow areas received more than 4 inches of rain. Bright orange areas had more than 6 inches. The highest rain amount was at Weber's Falls, 7 62/100 inches. Storms caught everyone's attention. Moisture came in the form of snow in the far western panhandle. Oklahoma City was treated to rain and wind that blew down trees. In the eastern part of the state, there were still flood warnings in effect as late as Wednesday evening. Checking on soil moisture, our recent storms have left the state with excellent soil moisture as summer crops start their growing season. A map of the percent of plant available water from the surface down to 16 inches indicates that most soils across Oklahoma have all the moisture they can hold for young plants. The areas with drier soils are near Eric, Grandfield, Ardmore, and Durant. Here's Gary with the impact from our March and April rainfall.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Well, Mother Nature tried her darndest to get rid of the drought. Did we get rid of all the drought, though, across the entire state? Let's take a look at the latest drought monitor map, see what we have. Well, I've been promising a drought-free map, but unfortunately, Mother Nature just didn't cooperate. We still have a tiny bit of moderate drought down in southeastern, south central Oklahoma, and a little bit of abnormally dry conditions around there, and a little dab over in east central Oklahoma. Hopefully we can get rid of that. If we take a look at the 60-day rainfall accumulation map, however, from the Mesonet, we can see that area down across south central through southeast Oklahoma. And you can just see the greens and the yellows. Those are areas that unfortunately didn't get enough rainfall to eradicate the drought or the dry conditions. And we also have some of that down further to the west along the Red River. And that's another place to watch for. And if we look at the percentage of normal rainfall map from the Mesonet for the last 60 days, that again shows up in those yellow and tan colors. And then you can see the stark contrast with the dark greens and the dark blues across most of the rest of the state. Those are places that got 140 to more than 200% of normal rainfall over the last 60 days. So lots and lots of drought eradication. Unfortunately, there's just a little bit left. The good news is, if we look at the U.S. monthly drought outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, if we just get, climatologically speaking, the normal amount of rainfall for May, we should be able to take care of the rest of that drought. So we still have a little bit more work to do. Let's just get some good rains in here across those areas, and we will have a completely white drought map, which would be wonderful. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Very similar to corn, we have grain sorghum or milo. Indifferent, you can call it whatever. But we see here we're in the sorghum crop, and sometimes that we make the differentiation between grain sorghum and what we've had in recent years kind of really take off, especially in the western part of the state, forage sorghum and sweet sorghum. Practically they're identical. They're the same species, a little bit different subspecies. So the grain sorghum you see here is practically the same as the sweet sorghum or the forage sorghum we see in other parts of the state. We have a little bit more pest pressure here in grain sorghum than we typically do in our corn crop. One of those has been a hot topic in recent years, and it's the sugarcane aphid. Sugarcane aphid was historically a sugarcane pest because of the name, obviously. It actually came into sorghum and is now a major pest in the southern half of the United States in our sorghum crop. But when we talk about pests, we have to talk about weeds. And when we talk about weed control, this is a crop to where we have a lot of challenge in. It's a grass crop, but it's one of our few grain crops that we're going to grow during the summer that Mesonet is a non-GMO. This is completely conventional variety, so we have no new forms of technology as far as our herbicides to be able to take some of our problematic weeds. Up until recently, this has been a really positive crop when we've started to go into some of our drier regions as far as the double crop is concerned. Most of the time when we're in our drier regions, some of our more traditional double crops don't fit into the system. Grain sorghum did fit into the system. However, because of the sugarcane aphids and how late that these matured during a double crop system, it kind of is a little bit problematic, and you're kind of rolling that dice planting grain sorghum as a double crop. If you look back in our history, we've had very few years of complete grain sorghum failures across the state. It's one that's very stable, very secure. The price is getting competitive just because a lot of folks are going to corn, are going to soybeans, are going to non-summer crops, and we're in drastic need of grain sorghum across the U.S.
Kim Anderson joins us now. Kim, the frost and the snow taking its toll on the wheat crop from this past weekend.
Well, if you look at Kansas, western Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle, maybe down into Texas some, one estimate I saw said that it would probably reduce production by about 18 million bushels. Of course, everybody else is saying they got to wait and see what's happening. But that would be a 2% decrease in the hard red winter wheat crop if you look at an average crop, a 1% decrease in the U.S. wheat crop, and a 0.07% increase in the world wheat crop. But yet it resulted in a 13% increase in wheat prices, about 50 cents. And I think that's significant, and I think that's telling us a story.
The wheat tours are underway. Tell us a little bit about where they're going and what they're seeing.
Well, if you look at Oklahoma, you know, they estimated the Oklahoma crop around 100 million bushels compared to about 130 million last year. Right at a 96 to 100 million is the average Oklahoma crop, so slightly below our average in that area. If you look at Kansas, I don't have the exact number on that, but it's looks like it's about 50 to 60% of the 2016 crop, so significantly lower there. Winter wheat estimates are all hard red winter wheat estimates are coming in around 800 million bushels. Produced just a little over 1 billion last year. The average is 869 million, so looks like maybe a below average hard red winter wheat crop. The all U.S. winter wheat at 1.3 billion bushels, that's down from almost 1.9 last year. I think that's significant and will have a price impact. And if you look at all U.S. wheat right now, the estimates are around 1.9 billion, maybe slightly higher than that. We produced 2.3 billion last year, and the average is around 2.1 billion.
It sounds like protein premiums have increased. What's happening there?
Well, there's I think a significant increase in the premiums. Of course, you know, you compare them to a year ago, they were high because there was a shortage of protein. But right now, ordinary wheat, that's less than 11% protein, has no premium. You get 11% protein in wheat, you get 17 cents, 11.4, 41 cents, 11.6, and our average in Oklahoma is normally 11.4 to 11.6, 60-cent premium, 11.8%, 73%, and 12% protein wheat, $1.23. So there's a significant premium in the market offered right now for wheat.
A lot to talk about this week. What are the takeaways for producers?
Well, I think producers, I know if I was a producer, I'd say, do I get any of that protein premium? And that they will get the protein premium, but it's going to be what goes in the bin, and the market will adjust the basis to the location. If the location has protein, then they're going to be at a higher price, and the basis will be better. So they'll get a better cash price. I think lower production does mean higher prices, but I believe quality is significantly more important than quantity this year. That protein premium, I think, is a real indicator for this year and years down the road on prices for Oklahoma wheat.
Terrific. Kim, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
This spring, some Oklahoma cow-calf producers will be using artificial insemination to rebreed some or all of the cows in their cow herd. I think we need to have realistic expectations of an artificial insemination program. Most of them will use what we call timed AI, which incorporates the use of an estrus synchronization protocol, where we try to get all of the cows to come into estrus at about the same time, and so we can artificially inseminate them on 1 or 2 given mornings. In any situation like this, we need to understand that the estrus synchronization protocol won't be 100% effective. Let's use the example of we've got 100 cows that calved in February and March, and we apply our estrus synchronization protocol, whichever one we choose. We can realistically expect about 80% or 80 of those 100 cows to respond to the protocol that we choose. And the reason that not all of them respond is that some of the cows calved later in the calving season. Some of the cows are in poor body condition. Some of the cows give a little more milk, and therefore the suckling intensity that they're incurring from their calf has an impact on when those cows can return to estrus cycles. So let's start with that 80 of those 100 cows respond to estrus synchronization. Then if we have a really talented inseminator, a technician that knows what they're doing and does a good job with high quality semen, a 70% conception rate of the cows that he breeds is a really good goal. So now we've got 80 cows that we had capable of getting bred, 70% of those conceived to artificial insemination, and that gives us 56% or 56 of those 100 cows then that realistically we could expect to get pregnant to the artificial insemination program. That brings up the next question. How many cleanup bulls do we need in that situation? Our friends at the University of Nebraska out at the North Platte Experiment Station took a look at all of the research that had been done across the United States looking at the number of cleanup bulls that would be required in typical estrus synchronization and AI programs. And they grouped them in basically 3 different categories. One, a very normal situation where they'd have about 1 bull for every 20 to 30 cows. Another grouping they put all the research trials into were those where they had 1 bull to something in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 cows, and then finally the one where they really stretched it out, where they had 1 bull to 50 to 60 cows. What they found, bottom line, was that it made no difference in terms of those kinds of cow to bull ratios at the beginning of the breeding season with those cleanup bulls. And why that works is, remember, we had about half of the cows already bred to AI, and therefore the number of cows that still were eligible to get bred is half as many. And that's why when they used only 2 bulls for 100 cows, they had a cow to bull ratio of basically 1 bull to 25 cows that were eligible to be bred. And so I think we can use this information to help us decide how many bulls we need for a cleanup season in our AI program and still have a good overall pregnancy rate when we check those cows next fall. We hope this gives you a little better understanding of what to expect from an artificial insemination program and cleanup bulls afterwards for your breeding program this spring. Hey, we look forward to seeing you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Cattle markets continue strong. Darrell, are you surprised by the strong market?
Well, to some extent, I think we have been all year through the first quarter, and now we're almost halfway through the second quarter. These markets have continued surprisingly strong. We knew there were reasons for these markets to sort of stabilize and sort of hold their own, but they've actually been stronger than we expected at virtually every level. Box beef has stayed high. That has allowed fed cattle prices to stay high, and feeder cattle markets have been supported both by the feedlot demand as well as obviously improving forage conditions and prospects for good forage this summer.
How long can good prices last?
Well, there's a couple things going on. Longer term, of course, we know that we're in a growing supply scenario. Beef production's up this year and will continue to be up. And cattle numbers are growing. But at the same time, you know, demand is really the driver of this thing, on top of some short-term supply fundamentals that are fairly supportive. And that can continue. And so we're really just watching this as we go. As long as domestic demand and the global demand for U.S. beef continues to improve, then you know, we can maintain these prices. We'll see some seasonal weakness as we move into the summer. We're probably near a seasonal peak, although I'm hesitant to say that because we've pushed this thing off longer than we would have expected already.
Well, and recently there's been some snow across western Kansas and on into Colorado. Will that impact the cattle markets any?
Well, it's at this point, it's certainly helping. Psychologically, it's contributing to this bullish psychology in the market. I think when you look at, obviously the death losses are there out in the country for cow-calf and stocker producers as well as in the feedlot. Those are costs to producers. There's a lot of mud and management headaches that go with this weather when this snow melts. In terms of actual supply response, I don't think this is big enough to cause a fundamental change in the market, but you know, it will slow down cattle performance somewhat. So given that we're already tight, we have carcass weights that are down, this will prolong that somewhat, and so we'll see some impact, and it's positive in that respect, but we probably will never be able to pick it out in the data in terms of really seeing and being able to point to it and say that was the storm effect.
We're in the first week of May, and people love to get out and grill, and it's getting that grilling season. What can consumers expect as far as beef prices go?
Well, you know, retail beef prices have been working their way generally down over the last, you know, really for more than a year now, and that will continue. Retail prices are still responding to the increase in production. Seasonally, again, we've had some strength in wholesale beef prices, but the retail prices continue to adjust. So consumers are seeing some benefits here, and you know, we're looking forward to grilling season, that seasonal demand really kicking in for the summer.
How can retail prices fall while all the other indicators are so strong?
Well, you know, this is the nature of the beef industry. There's margins at every levels. And what happened in 2015 and all through 2016 was that retail and wholesale margins widened because cattle prices fell first and more dramatically. Now we're kind of playing catch up with those retail prices starting to come down at the same time that we're actually seeing this strength so far this year in cattle and wholesale beef prices. So that means it's coming out of those margins. So we're seeing retail margins tighten up a little bit, packer margins are tightening up a little bit, and that's just the nature of the dynamics of this thing. We'll continue to see those retail prices adjust a bit as we go through the year, but we don't necessarily have to see a lot more change or a lot of pressure on the wholesale and the fed cattle prices.
Okay, thank you much. Darrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Finally today, the family business that is celebrating an important milestone. SUNUP's Curtis Hare takes us to Blaine County.
In small town Oklahoma, you're guaranteed to see three things: an American flag, a donut shop, and a grain elevator. Although the first two may be subtle fixtures in Watonga, there's no missing the gigantic building towering over the town. At the very top of the elevator, you'll find the words Wheeler Brothers.
Well, we've got 12 grain elevators in western Oklahoma, and most of the year-round locations have fertilizer plants at them. So we take in grain from the farmers, then market the grain.
Todd Lafferty runs the company with his brothers Ladd and Austin, brothers by blood and in business.
Well, it's pretty neat. I mean, we get to see each other every day, and we all do different things for the company, so it's not like we're breathing down each other's necks. I mean, we've got a very good working relationship.
It really gives you a good feeling to go home at night and knowing that, you know, you're doing your best, and it's not only your family on the line, but it's everybody else's family on the line who has someone that works for you.
Family is important to the Laffertys. It's the main reason they took over Wheeler Brothers, because they are continuing a legacy that was started by their great-grandfather.
Wheeler Brothers was started in 1917 by my great-grandfather and his brother, Frank and Bill Wheeler.
My grandfather went to work for the business, and he eventually bought out his father and his uncle in the 1940s.
The company thrived and even purchased a section of the railroad that runs right next to the elevator for exporting purposes. Gene Wheeler ran it until he retired in the 80s. At the time, the Lafferty brothers were on a little bit of a different path.
We were actually encouraged to all do something different before going into the family business, and so I practiced law for 11 years in Amarillo, Texas before coming into our family business, and they both worked for multinational grain companies in different parts of the United States, and Ladd was even over in Switzerland for a couple years.
Austin, Ladd, and Todd eventually came in to take on the family business. This week they'll be celebrating 100 years of service to Blaine County.
Well, Wheeler Brothers is an integral part of not only Watonga but also Blaine County, as they have 4 locations in the county and 12 total locations in the state of Oklahoma. So it reaches far and wide. Availability to take your wheat to a local place and not have to truck it a great distance means a lot to your farmers.
You know, there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, if Wheeler Brothers ain't got an elevator here, Watonga would not be existent. I mean, it would just be a dried up, blowed up town.
Blaine County producer Kenneth Brewer worked at the company for years before he retired, and he still relies on the Wheeler Brothers for his farming production.
Not bragging on the boys, but Gene had 3 great grandkids, you know, and they're competitors just like he was, you know, and they're bound and determined that it's going to be, you know, part of the community, and they've went to other cities, other towns, and built more elevators, and it's, you know, not only helped Watonga, they've helped the whole western part of the state of Oklahoma.
And there's no plans to slow down.
Almost kind of feels like a new beginning. I mean, I don't think we're crossing a finish line by any stretch. Any of our children want to come into the family business, I would, if they want to do that, I would encourage it, and if that happens, then I would like to see the business to go on another 100 years. I don't think I'll be around then.
In Blaine County, I'm Curtis Hare.
That'll do it for SUNUP this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at our website and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at SUNUP.